Very pigmented, very beautiful. Oh, I just love these. We're gonna go ahead and start with our eyeshadow. My eyes have been primed, my eyebrows are done, so we can jump right into the shadow. Now for today's palette, I am gonna be using the Soft Glam #2 palette, which I think is perfectly fitting for what I'm trying to do, and that's create a soft glam makeup look, or at least the eyes. So this is what the palette looks like in the inside. First of all, mini palettes get me every single time. I think they're so adorable and tiny. And from my understanding, the shades in this palette are just a selection from the original. I've always wanted to purchase the original. I just never really got around to it, but I'm happy that I have this one in my collection and get to test it out. And that's what we're gonna do today. So I'm gonna jump right into applying the shadow, and I'm gonna start with Orange Soda, which is this one right here. And I'm gonna take a nice fair amount of that, and I'm just going to place this in my crease as my transitional shade, just to help blend other shadows that we put on our lid, and you know, all that good stuff that you do with a transition shade. So I'm just going to buff this in my crease. Considering the shade is so light and you don't really see it against my skin tone too much, makes it the perfect transition shade because I don't want it to be too dark. I just want something to be there just to help blend the other shadows, so this works out perfectly. So now that I have that placed, I can move on to the next shadow, and I want to take this one down here called Incense. So let me hold it correctly. So it's this one right here on the corner, which is like a brown in my opinion, but like that tan brown looking color. Ugh, terrible with the explanations, so let me limit those. But I'm gonna use a fluffy brush and just start to pack this on the outer corner. So, and then I will blend it inwards. This is definitely a shadow you have to work up and, you know, build up the color just for it to be intense. But again, this is supposed to be like a soft look, so you don't want it to be like really, really intense, but you do want color to be there essentially. Now that I have that shadow a little built up, I am going to go into Mulberry, which is the burgundy shade in this palette. And I'm going to take very little of this because I don't want to deepen it up too much, but I do want to add a little bit of this shadow on the outer corner and just kind of press and flick it inwards. Just a little bit. Just create a little bit of depth in that area, because I don't think that the previous shadow we used called Incest really did the trick. So I just want to deepen it up again just slightly with this shadow. So now that we have that shadow placed, I'm gonna go back into Orange Soda, which is that first shade we were using, and I'm just going to, you know, just kind of feather it into the crease a little bit more and on the outer corner, and just to kind of just mix it in with everything else and help blend everything else out. That way we can lighten it up just a little bit, because again, it's a soft glam look, so I don't want it to look or appear too dark. Now I'm gonna take a little bit of this shadow right here, and I'm going to use a flat brush, and I'm going to press this on my lid. Now, from what I remember from other ABH shadows, you don't need to spray the brush necessarily. They are pretty pigmented. So I'm just gonna work on pressing this shadow on this front half of my lid, and I'm not cutting the crease, as you guys can see, with concealer or anything like that, because one thing I do believe when it comes to a soft glam look like this, using concealer to actually cut the crease gives it a more perfected look, but also not so soft in a way. I mean, I guess it just really depends on how you do it, but for today, I'm definitely not cutting the crease. I'm just going straight in with this shadow. And from what I can tell, it seems to be blending in with, you know, the outer corner and everything, so it's kind of looking monochromatic. But maybe we can spice it up by adding the secondary shimmer in this palette called Dreamer, which is a lot lighter. But I'm gonna go ahead and apply this to this eye first, and then we'll tap a little bit of Dreamer on top. As a final part of this look, I'm gonna take a little bit of the black. I mean, why not? It's in the palette, so let's go ahead and use it. And I'm going to smudge it out here on the outer part. And I'm just gonna take a little bit of that. So I'm gonna line this part first. And then I'll take another brush and just smudge it out. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean up the fallout underneath the eye, as well as clean up the sides a little bit. I'm also going to apply my lashes off camera, and then we can come back and finish up the base makeup. But these are the eyes. To me, it's giving like soft, sultry vibes versus just a straight up soft glam look, but I'm not mad about that. As far as the palette goes, I will give you guys my final thoughts on it at the end of the video, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. But let me go ahead and finish cleaning this up, and then we can finish up the look. So I zoomed you guys out just a little bit, and now we are ready to work on the base. Now, I did go ahead and prime my skin before even starting this video, and I felt like that would be okay just because I do it in every single video, and I'm not using anything new. I'm using the same great products I love to use. I did go back to the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip for today's video and add a little bit of the Laura Mercier Blurring Pure Canvas Primer. So those are the primers that I used, but again, they've already been sitting on my face for some time. So let's jump into foundation. I am going to be using the Maybelline Superstay. This is in Golden Doré, which is number 312. And you guys know, like, I've been loving this foundation overall. And honestly, it's the #1 foundation in my collection that actually matches me properly. So we're just gonna go in directly with our sponge and start putting this all over our face. I just love the coverage of this, and again, it's the one that matches me the best in my collection. So it was like a no-brainer for me, and I just love it. So as you guys can see, I already have the concealer on after blending out the foundation, and that's just because I wanted to give it a little bit of time to sit on the face. Now, although we used a lighter, coverage type of foundation, but it still gave us that, flawless full coverage look with minimal product, I did want to go in with a full coverage concealer. That's, my jam typically. There is only maybe one concealer that I love that isn't full coverage, but for the most part, everything is full coverage with me. So this is the e.l.f. Camo Concealer, and this one is in Tan Sand. And now that it has been sitting for a little bit, I am going to go ahead and start to blend it out with my sponge. Now again, this is the original concealer, so it's more of a matte finish, which I do enjoy and like. And I like the level of brightness that it gives my under eye and my T-zone, and just brightens up my skin very, very nicely. So that's why I kind of chose this one for today. With this one, a little bit definitely goes a long way. And again, it gives you that full coverage look that I enjoy. So as you guys can see, I didn't completely blend the concealer underneath my eye right there. And that's because I'm going to take this e.l.f. brush. This is their Flawless Concealer Brush, and I'm just going to use this just to get closer to the under eye instead of using the sponge. I very well could have used the sponge, but to me this is a little bit easier, especially when I allow my concealer to dry a little bit. The brush, does a little bit of a better job blending it out, in my opinion. So I'm just going to use this just to get up underneath here and just to make sure all the edges are nice and blurred. I I am now going to cream contour, and I have been loving the definition that this Milani Conceal and Perfect concealer, gives my skin. It is in warm almond, and I'm just going to take this on the perimeter of my face. If you guys remember, a little bit of product definitely goes a long way, but I just love this for the definition that it gives. It's just so beautiful and defined. So using that same sponge, I'm just blending out the little bit of product that I have distributed. I like to do this in sections, so I start with my forehead area, and then eventually I'll work my way to my cheekbones and all of that. And I even do my nose contour a little bit differently as well when I'm using this product, because I do like to use it to contour my nose, but I do it in a more precise manner. So I will show you that today as well. So when it comes to contouring my nose and underneath my lip, I like to take the same product, place a little bit on the back of my hand, and then I take a flat definer brush that normally I would use for like eyeshadow underneath the eyes, and I'm going to run my brush in the product. After running my brush in the product, I am going to do my best to create a straight line from my brow down the side of my nose and carve it out. So once I have it like that, I'm going to take a little bit more product, and I'm basically just going to create kind of like a circle on the tip of my nose. And then with the remaining product, go underneath my lip. It's pretty much what I do with powder, but I'm allowed to be a little bit more precise because I am using such a flat defined brush, and it gives me more of a straight line versus me just trying to wing it with some powder. And then with the concealer brush that I used before, I'll just use this just to blend everything out. I really enjoy using this concealer for this, and I feel comfortable using it for this because it blends out so effortlessly and nicely that it's like not a problem, Definitely doesn't get muddy, and I'm not using too much product because the brush can only hold but so much product that it makes it so that I'm not putting too much on when I am creating these lines, and it just makes it that much more easier to like blend out. So I'll do that with the brush, and then of course I'll just tap on top of it with my sponge just to ensure everything is blended out. And to me, right about now, that's like the perfect nose contour for me. All right, so now that we have contoured our skin, we can move into our powders. If you haven't seen my previous video, you should definitely watch that right after this one. But I did mention this powder. This is the Becca Hydra Mist Set and Refresh powder. And oh boy, you guys, I fell in love with this powder last video, or the last time I filmed. So I'm gonna go ahead and use it again today because it does blur the skin so nicely, and I'm just obsessed with it. Unlike last video, I am gonna go in with the brush first before I use my sponge. This is the Morphe M554. So I'm just going to tap that into the powder, and I'm going to start pressing it underneath my eyes just to initially set everything down. And then I'll go in with my wet sponge with just a little bit more powder and just go right on top of everything. And since this Charlotte Tilbury powder does a great job at blurring the skin as well, I want to use this on the rest of my face just to make sure everything is blurred and not just my T-zone, and just give the overall, face a blurred and smooth effect, kind of like a real life filter. Let's go ahead and finish off our lower lash line. So for that, I'm just going to use a little bit of incense and Dusty Rose and just smear those on the lower lash line just to complete it, tie everything in together. I don't want to smoke it out too much because again, this is supposed to be a soft glam look, and I feel like if your under eye is too smoky, then it will definitely take away from that. I'm going to keep the brow bone and the inner corner simple by just placing a little bit of tempera, which is this shadow right here, instead of using a shimmer shadow. This one does have like slight shimmer in it, but it's hard to tell. But I'm going to just use this to brighten up the inner corner of my eye, and then I'm also going to take a little bit of it on my brow bone as well. Like, this is just one of those shadows that kind of appear a little bit white when you put it on, so it definitely gives that highlighted effect. And to be honest, when's the last time you guys see me highlight my brow bone? It's definitely been some time, so I guess we are taking it back a little bit here, but I do like the highlighted effect that this shadow gives in the inner corner. So before we move on to bronzer, I did go ahead and pop in some liner on my lower lashes, and the LA Girl Perfect Precision Lip Liner in the shade Nude was the perfect choice for me because again, I want to open up the eyes and make them seem wide open and bright and not dark and vampy. So I opted for that, and it's definitely less intimidating than a, you know, like straight up white liner. But I love what it did with the eyes. So now for bronzer, I'm going to be using both of these, the ABH bronzer in Saddle as well as the Hoola Benefit bronzer as well. I like this one just for a little bit of bronziness to the skin. It doesn't do too much because it's not too dark, but then a little bit of the Saddle from ABH really creates that extra dimension to it. So I'm going to use the Hoola Benefit first, and then I will slowly work my way into using the ABH. Now for blush and highlight, I went ahead and picked up finally more of the e.l.f. duos. So this one is in Spiced Apple. I've also picked up another one which I will use at a later date, but your girl had to dip into this today. I could not wait any longer. I really wanted to test out another one. So we're gonna use this for blush and for highlight. Now I'm gonna grab the blush first, of course. And hello, look at that pigment on there. And I'm just going to press this on. Very pigmented, very beautiful. Oh, I just love these. You guys, if you have not picked these up yet, you really, really need to. In like all the shades, because they're just so freaking gorgeous, so pigmented, and I love it. I could apply blush all day if you allowed me to. I've definitely come a long, long way when it comes to blush. So I'm gonna stop here before I go overboard, and we're gonna take a little bit of the highlighter with that same brush, and I'm just gonna run this right here. Alright beauties, so this here is the finished and final look. I did go ahead and just settle on my traditional glossy lip is what I love. I don't know why, I just always come back to this, and I have tons and tons of lip products in my drawer. I just reach for this every freaking time, and I don't know what it is, but I do feel like it does go very, very nicely with today's makeup look. Although I was going for soft glam, we ended up with soft and sultry, which I'm not mad at all. I think the look came out wonderfully. Now moving on to the palette, which is this one. I did enjoy using this palette. One thing I want to say for sure is that there is a ton of kick up in the pan when you're pulling the shadows to use them. There is also fallout, so if those are things that are just like an absolute no for you, then you would not like this palette. But would I recommend this palette is the biggest question of all. I have to say there are a lot more affordable palettes with, you know, a similar color story or similar colors that you could get for a cheaper price and still perform very, very well. Honestly, I just don't think that it's something that you have to run out and get. I mean, I've been wanting this palette or the bigger version of this palette for a long time, and to finally have this one, I'm not that impressed. Although I love the way the makeup look came out, I still think there are better palettes out there. Now that's just my opinion, that's just me keeping it all the way 100 with you guys, as I always do. But overall, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. And with all of that, I am gonna close it out here. I love you guys, and I will see you guys in my next upload, which is on Wednesday. So make sure your bell notifications are turned on.